Hey everybody, today I'm talking about some board games that I am quite hotly anticipating. So I quite rarely do this kind of thing because more often than not I'm playing games from yesteryear, but more and more information has come out about the kind of upcoming games, whether that be at Essenspiel this year or even games going into the next year. I mean, more details are becoming more and more clear. So I have 10 main games here to talk about, as well as some honourable mentions. And some of these have more information on than others, but still I'll be talking about them pretty briefly. Before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. So the first game I'm talking about today is Cascadero. Now this is going to be the latest Rainer Knizia design, at least his bigger style games. This one out of all these games is probably my most anticipated, so I've started off strong here. I love Rainer Knizia games. This one is, from initial kind of impressions, it looks like a game in the vein of Babylonia, Through the Desert, Blue Lagoon. Those kind of route building games are my favourite Knizia style games, and this one looks absolutely stellar in terms of its visual design. It does have Ian O'Toole artwork, so that has definitely roped me in a bit more. I think maybe the box cover is my favourite box art that I've maybe ever seen. It really does have Chairman of the Board written all over it. There's some track climbing here, different strategies you can go down. I think details on the gameplay itself are quite scant at the moment, but yeah, at the moment this is definitely ticking a hell of a lot of boxes for me, and it really has opened my eyes and kind of has me salivating about what this game could possibly be. 2 to 4 players, 45 minutes, which again just screams what I am looking for. So really cannot wait for Cascadero to get out there. And on top of that, just as a kind of a plus one to this game, there is a sister game for this coming out called Cascadero, which is a roll and write version of the game. So Knizia has done this kind of thing before, where he releases several versions of the same title. There's usually a little bit of cross-contamination or shared DNA between the games, but usually different enough to be a different title in itself. So Cascadero is definitely the one I'm most looking forward to because it's the big box game. But who knows, Cascadero could be just as good, and I'll probably end up picking them both up. In fact, I can pretty certainly say that I will. The next game is Civolution. So Civolution is the latest Stefan Feld game. Now, if you look behind me, I don't know if you can see these particular games, but I have a ton of Stefan Feld games in my collection. One of my favourite designers, if not my favourite designer of all time. Now, Civolution, as the name would suggest, is a civilization style game, which is something that Stefan Feld has never really dipped his toe into. I've played quite a few Civ games recently, games like Mosaic, games like Olympos, the Golden Ages, which I've enjoyed to different degrees, generally positive. But Civolution has me most intrigued because I'd love to see what Stefan Feld does with that genre. Now, I believe this does have a degree of dice drafting involved, and I love dice drafting, especially when Stefan Feld is responsible for it. And it also has some degree of tech tree chaining, that kind of thing. So the idea of getting better and better upgrades and building an engine the further you go down a particular rabbit hole, I suppose. From the initial blurb on Board Game Geek, it does say that this is one of those games where there is so much you can do that each time you play it, you can only really scratch the surface or kind of do a little bit of the entire experience, which I tend to love games like that because that's what keeps me coming back for more, to try something different. So highly intrigued about this one. Who knows what this is going to look like? I don't think there's any images at all at the moment, but yeah, definitely has my full attention and cannot wait to see how Civolution looks. Next up, I have something completely different with 9 Nights. So this is actually a Stratego variant. If you're not familiar with Stratego, it's a 2-player kind of head-to-head abstract game as you are moving these pieces towards your enemy, but your opponent doesn't initially know the strength of your pieces until they attack, and then they're revealed the strength, and then you have to kind of remember where everything was. This is pretty much the same as that, but there are a few more twists involved, where certain pieces have strengths over other ones, etc. And I think this game has a little bit more of a deduction element to it, because you have different types of soldiers and you know with a bit more clarity about what each one possibly could be. So it's not as wild and random and chaotic as Stratego was. And I like Stratego, but it would be nice to see a more modern version of it out there. I love the visuals of this one. It has a really cool minimalist but kind of classic look to it with these knights on the board, and it is designed by a Go master, believe it or not. So he obviously has some game pedigree and knows where the depth of a game can come from. So this one could be a hit or a miss, but I'd definitely like to get it to the table. That is 9 knights. Next up, I have Patterns. Now, Patterns is being advertised as a mandala game, and if you're not familiar with mandala, it's one of my favourite 2-player abstract card games of all time. An absolutely amazing game, and one that I still talk about and play a lot. Now, I'm not sure how many similarities there are between the two, if it's just a pure marketing ploy to get the fans of the previous mandala into this one, but the same design duo. This one, I think, is less of a card game and more of a pure abstract as you're moving things around, trying to get groups of things together and kind of have a bit of area control. I'm not entirely sure on the mechanical aspects other than that, but again, it does not look like it is card driven. But if it's going to piggyback off the name and prestige of a game like Mandala, I'm hoping and being optimistic that it's going to be as good as Mandala. So I'm probably deluding myself a bit on that one, because Mandala is pretty much, almost perfect, where Patterns may not be. But 15 minutes, 2-player only abstract game, what could be wrong really? If it's that quick, I'm certainly willing to give that one a shot. And let's be optimistic about this and hope it is going to be as good as the original Mandala. Next up, I have Coliseum Ave Titus. Now, this is a strange one because this is from the same design group who did the original Coliseum, which is like an auction style game that was actually a re-implementation of the Princes of Florence. A Kramer and I think it's Marcus Lubke co-design. This new version is inspired by the original Coliseum, which is also getting a reprint, by the way. But also has some input by Johnny Pack. Now, Johnny Pack is a designer I've been hit and miss with, but I know he does have a lot of fans. I think this one's an 1.5 to 2 hour game. Wolfgang Kramer games tend to not go that long, so I'm really intrigued to see what this one offers. Very limited details about this one, but it is inspired by the original Coliseum, which had a great theme as you were putting on these performances in your own Coliseum, your own arena, and trying to get as many spectators as you can. And I think this one still maintains that theme, although the gameplay is going to be quite a bit different. So who knows where it could be? It could be too heavy, it could be overkill. Who knows? I don't even know if it's going to be another set collection auction style game, and I'm almost hoping that it's not. I'm kind of hoping it's something completely different to the original Coliseum, but still with that same design group and that same awesome theme. Next up, I have Nucleum. Nucleum, a bit more out there in the zeitgeist, being talked about. I'm definitely getting some buzz about this one. So this is a game by Simone Luciani, and I think David Terzi's involved to some degree. And it's being kind of advertised as a follow-on from games like Barrage, which is a game I think is fantastic and designed by Simone Luciani. And also Brass has been put out there in terms of having some shared DNA. So that in itself really does obviously interest me, because Brass and Barrage are some of my favourite games of all time. And it's probably going to keep that cutthroat, economic edge to it. And from what I do know about this one, I do like this idea of that your actions, your options to take different actions become limited as the game goes on, because in order to build your own network on the board, you need to give these actions up to actually lay those rows and foundations. That's a cool mechanism. It sounds very agonizing in practice. I can really see how this would stress players out. But I tend to like games like that, and if it's up there with the pedigree of games like Brass and Barrage, then it's definitely going to hold its own. So I think this one's going to be a popular one of the year. My only apprehension about this one is that it is going to be a 2 hour game. It's going to be relatively heavy. Those kind of games are quite difficult for me to get to the table nowadays, but if somebody offered me the chance to play this one, I would certainly jump at that. So I'm not quite sure if I'll pick up this one myself. I probably will, but yeah, I'm certainly all committed to playing it and committed to trying it and seeing if it is as good as those aforementioned games. So that is Nucleum. Next up, I have Terra Pyramids, another game I believe is by Kramer and Kiesling. This one a completely brand new design as you are building a pyramid. It looks like it's grid-based, so I think you are managing resources, placing workers, building routes on the board, activating columns and rows, that kind of thing. I'm not sure what else this game entails, but again, designers of that pedigree who've worked together for so long, put out almost unanimously great games. With a new design out there, it's obviously going to get my attention. So that's all I can really say about this one. I like the idea of building pyramids. There's been tons of games out there with that theme. But yeah, definitely this is going to be a banker for me. I'm going to get it to the table as soon as I can because it sounds relatively straightforward, but it's going to have that depth that all Kramer and Kiesling games do. So that is Terra Pyramids. Next up, I have Busy Beak. So something different here. So this is a set collection card game by Phil Walker Harding, and it's completely modular. So each time you're playing this game, you are going to play with a different arrangement of birds. And the idea is you're going to be collecting these different flocks of birds, but each different bird type has a different power associated to it to let you kind of manipulate the central tableau and things you're collecting from. I tend to really like games that have a simple framework, but different sets throw a spanner in the works and make things work a little bit differently without having to kind of relearn a whole bunch of rules or re-understand how different mechanisms work with each other. This one, it seems like a simple plug and play, just pick and choose the different modules you want and just work with what you have on a tactical level, but still maintaining that kind of core framework of the game itself. So I really like simple card games. I love set collection games. I have a ton of them. And this one seems like it's going to have a lot to explore and a lot of replayability simply through the sheer numbers of decks of different sets you can play with. So, hopefully this one's going to hold up and it's going to bring something new to the table, considering there are so many different set collection games out there. But it looks very nice. That bird theme is always popular since the big Wingspan came out several years ago. And hopefully this one is great. So that is Busy Beaks. So let's move on to the Rats of Worcester, another Simone Luciani game, this time with a designer who I'm not aware of, who he's working with here. Now this is, I think it's going to be a midweight Euro, as a very bizarre theme here. I think you're a colony of rats, you're trying to get rats these rooms, you're building up your own little kind of colony, getting them resources, this kind of thing, looking after everybody, I suppose. I tend to like these organizational style games as you're building a little habitat, putting people in their rooms, feeding them, making sure everyone's happy. I tend to like games like that. A very quirky little theme, lovely artwork, obviously designed a pedigree with Simone Luciani. I believe about a 90-minute game, which is that sweet spot for me. I believe less than 3 on the weight scale. Again, very playable, easy to get to the table and learn and maintain those rules. And I'm kind of going to this one with very limited knowledge other than those things I've already mentioned. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is that I have heard there is a fair amount of take that in this game. Now, take that is something I can take or leave. If it's done well, I don't mind it in my games. But if it's kind of shoehorned in there and you're just attacking players' colonies for the sake of it, that's probably going to it's probably going to deter me from this game. But that's what I know about this one. Design pedigree, I'm all over this, and I love the look and the setting and the kind of the idea of this one. So that is the Rats of Worcester. And the final main game I'm talking about here is Wild Tiled West. Now, this is a polyomino style game, which, yes, I know it's been done to exhaustion, but I tend to like polyomino games when the polyomino isn't the only part of it. I kind of like it when there's games built on top of those polyominoes, and that seems like it's the case with Wild Tiled West, as there's a ton of different ways to score. You're drafting them from this these tiles from this big board, which I believe is dice driven. So I think you're drafting dice. The dice will let you use certain rows and columns to take these tiles from, which will block other players. So that's going to be a game in itself. But then you are placing these polyominoes down, which will do different things and let you score in different ways. So I've mentioned before, I love it. I've really enjoyed games like Alice's Garden, where yes, the polyomino part is a strong part of the game, but you're also scoring things on top of those polyominoes. So you're kind of like have layers of gameplay here. And this one's wrapped up in this Wild West theme. I believe you've got to fight off these kind of cowboy threats, do a bunch of different things like that. So it looks really nice. I believe the setup's quite quirky, as you have all the tiles laid out before you even start, so that could save some setting up time each time you play games like this, and which is all a bonus. So yeah, seems very simple, very accessible. The 90-minute mark for a polyomino game concerns me a little bit. That might be overstated. I could be getting the times wrong, and it could be a bit shorter than that one, but something reminds me saying this is a slightly longer polyomino game. But hopefully the gameplay is strong to hold its own and warrant that time frame. But it looks good, and I think the initial feedback from people who've played this game is very positive. So that is Wild Tiled West. So that's the main bulk of the games there. Just a few more honourable mentions here that I do want to get to the table when they're available here in the UK. And the first of which is Tucana Builders. So I really did enjoy the original Trails of Tucana, but I thought the replayability was somewhat lacking because you always have the same sheets each time. This one's a more physical component version of the game, as you're placing these hex tiles on top of a board, building routes, trying to connect things. So intrigued to try this one. Hopefully it's affordable and quick enough to play. And yeah, definitely want to get that onto the table soon. There's 3 more Knizia games that I'm aware of that I want to play. At the Office, a simple little roll and write game. And we have Haviland, which looks like a more abstract game. Very beautiful on the table with these kind of hot air balloons. And also Sunrise Lane, which is a reprint of an older game of Knizia, which he's known to do quite frequently. A more traditional Knizia, abstract, kind of zone building style game, with a cool kind of real estate theme to it, and it looks really nice on the table from the initial images here. And the final game, which has already got quite a lot of buzz because I think the Dice Tower did a glowing review of, is World Wonders. So another polyomino style game, but this one seems to have a few extra things to grab you in terms of table presence and things. So you're actually building these World Wonders, which will score in different ways. And again, amazing table presence. And it looks like this one's really coming out the gate strong, and there's going to be a lot of demand for this one. So, why not join the party and get involved? That is World Wonders. So there we have it, that concludes the video. Just a bunch of games here that have my attention. Sorry if I don't know a lot of details about these, but if you guys didn't know about them, at least you do now and can do some research yourself. Now, if there's something out there that you think I might like because you know my tastes, please do let me know, because I'm not so on the pulse with the games that are coming out in the near future. With the exception of these ones that I've talked about. But if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.